We saw scenarios much earlier in this course for a way of storing other values and then using them. So if we take the scenarios file in your working folder and then look at the what if analysis scenario manager, we can see there are a number of scenarios. And if we then show any one of them, such as awful bananas, and show, the values are fed in and the totals change. Now, in order to change from one scenario to another, if we were to completely come out and close the box, there would be 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks, 5 clicks. So that's 5 clicks. If we were to record those steps and store them as macros, we could reduce those 5 clicks down to 1 keyboard shortcut. A great reason for having a macro. So we go to the developer, record a macro, let's call it CMD bad apple, maintaining my naming convention, and then Control-Shift-A for apples. Now this macro is actually only going to be of any use in this particular file because it's the only file that contains these scenarios. So we're going to say this workbook, command bad apple. Okay. We then record ourselves going to the data ribbon, what if analysis, scenario manager, awful apples, show, close. And then we need to go back to the developer to stop recording. So that's the bad apple macro recorded. We then need to record another macro, command bad pair, Control, Shift and P, P for pair, this workbook, okay. And then our actions are data, what if, scenario manager, awful pair, show, close, and then stop the macro recording. And then one more, record the macro, command bad banana, Control, Shift, B for banana, this workbook again. Okay, so our actions are data ribbon, what if analysis, scenario manager, awful bananas, and show and close. So those are our 3 macros. Make sure we stop the last one recording. We have them all stored as keyboard shortcuts so we can move from one to the other. So if I now return all the scenarios back to the good values, so what if scenario manager, so we'll have normal bananas, pear normal, and apple normal. Close. What I can now do if I want to see the bad ones is Control-Shift-A for bad apples. We see that our keyboard shortcut runs the macro shows the bad apples and places the values in the sheet. No need to go into the scenario manager, choose the right one, show and close. If I want to see the bad pairs, Control-Shift-P puts in the bad pair values, and the bananas, Control-Shift-B runs our macro, which then places the values of the correct scenario into the sheet. Now, obviously, you would need to create a macro for every single scenario so that you could run any of them at any time simply by running the keyboard shortcut at this stage. Don't forget that when you save this file, it must be saved with an XLSM extension. So it must be saved as an Excel macro-enabled workbook for those macros to work. If you don't do that, then the macros effectively are removed from the workbook if you save it as a normal XLSX workbook. So it's vitally important that you save it with the correct extension. Now, just as we've been able to use a macro to move between various scenarios, therefore cutting down the amount of keyboard strokes or mouse actions we have to carry out, we can do very similar tasks with custom views. If you open the custom views file available in your working folder, you'll find that it has, if we look at the custom views on the view ribbon, 3 custom views: CEO view, full view, and quarters view. Now, it's not too much difficulty to click to change between those views, but it would be quite useful if we had 3 quick keyboard shortcuts that allowed us to change from one view to the other. Well, this is a good candidate for a macro. So we start ourselves recording. Gonna call it CMD View CEO. Keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-C. Storing this workbook, so it's only any use to this workbook. Okay. And then record myself going to View, Custom View, CEO View, Show, and Stop. I then need another macro, CMD View Whole. Keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-W. Again, stored in this workbook. Okay. And that will record me going to View, Custom View, Full View, Show. and then stop. And then the last one, Command View Quarters, Control Shift Q would be sensible. Again in this workbook, and that records me going to View, Custom View, Quarters, Show, and then we stop. So now I have 3 keyboard shortcuts to move me between the 3 views. Control Shift C for CEO, Control Shift W for whole view, Control Shift Q for quarter view. So I can quite quickly move between those 3 views as I see fit. Again, because I've stored the macros within this book, because they're only any use to this book, I need to make sure that I go to Save As and save this file. I can keep the same name, I just need to make sure that it's an Excel macro enabled workbook. Otherwise, the macros will not work. They will physically be removed from the file. And then I save, and I now have a macro enabled workbook with 3 macros that will speed up my life as I move between the different views, just as the other file speeds up my life, shortens the workload when I want to move between scenarios.